Hello! Welcome to the Automation Impact podcast. My name is Eduard Shlepetskyy. I'm CEO of Active Automation Company and UiPath Most Valuable Professional. This is the first season of episodes in which, together with other UiPath MVPs and RPA experts, we will be covering best practices in end-to-end RPA implementation from Center of Excellence enablement up to successful scaling. So I would highly recommend project champions and other managers who are currently building Center of Excellence to stay tuned. To learn more about the podcast, visit us on automationimpact.io and don't forget to subscribe. Alright, so welcome everyone. Today we are discussing development standards with Radomir Ivankovic from OLX Group. He is RPA Center of Excellence lead developer based in Germany, and also Radomir is UiPath Most Valuable Professional at UiPath. And I have a story how I met Radomir and what was my first impression of this guy. But before I tell my story, I would really appreciate if Radomir, you tell your story of how did you get to RPA, how did you get to UiPath MVP role, and what's your journey, what's your background? Welcome.
Thank you, Eduard, for having me here. I'm really honored to do this podcast with you. So, what's my background? I have a bachelor degree in electrotechnical engineering and computer science. And since I was a little kid, I liked fixing computers. And I did it like through my high school, and I was very curious how it works and how I can make it work better. So I'm in computers since I know for myself. And I even remember I was that part of generation that used dial-up internet. And I remember when I went to shop to buy something and the guy told me, have you heard Google? It's now new. You can go there and there's no commercials because we all use Yahoo. And Yahoo had plenty of commercials on homepage. And you need like 5 minutes to load that first page so you can seek for anything on internet. And that there was like Google. It was completely white with letters and you can search for anything. And at that moment, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I want to do this for my living.
Yeah, cool. And I'm curious also how you say that since childhood you were interested in computers. I'm really wondering how those computers look like. I'm sure that this is not the laptop you can fit in your bag and walk around the city.
Yeah, well, my father was a geek also, and he had the first computer in my home. It was a Spectrum. It was connected to a TV, and you can play some video games on it. And later on, we have Commodore 64 that I used to play, and you load video game or software from audio cassette, even though my children doesn't know what audio cassette is. And later on, we have Amiga 600 and Amiga 1200. And then my first PC with Windows was PC 386 with Windows 5.11.
That's crazy. I think that half of the words you say, I just don't know. Maybe shame on me, but half of the words you are mentioning, I just have no clue what it is. But yeah, let's see. That makes it more exciting from your background.
Yeah, well, it was very different from everything that you used to do it that days, because that days you didn't have video games, especially in Serbia. Serbia is a poor country, so not every house had a PC, and you have only TV. That was the only. So the first time when I see that I can actually interact with what's going on a TV, that was like crazy.
Magic.
Yeah, magic.
Yeah. I can imagine that. And how did you get to automation? And you say that you were a geek kind of from the very beginning. I'm curious before just saying about automation, I'm curious also if you had in the past some job where you were on the other side of this business. Did you ever did manual repetitive stuff? I mean, of course we all do it sometimes, but did you do it in large? Like, did you have a job where you were some data entry specialist or something like that? Or you, from the very beginning, you were more into tech?
So I did the most repetitive job in the world. I worked in a help desk. So you have like, it can be, let's say, 500 cases, but it's still only 500 cases, and you're working every day 8 hours with those 500 cases. And whenever a person calls you, it has issue with something, you know how to fix it. I used to work in a company called NCR, National Cash Registry. It's a huge American company. They still have a company in Belgrade, and they have a huge help desk in Belgrade. And there I was employed in a help desk tier 2 for Walmart. Now Walmart has 8,000 stores in USA, and they calling you for time clock, for registers, for PCs, for back office PCs, and you always know what's the issue. It's either something with network, and it gets repetitive. So you create a ticket, then you send a ticket to some other team, or you tell them like turn it off and on again, or plug in the cable or something, and because you have error codes, you know what's going on.
Got it.
And what dragged me into automation was actually that there are some DVR PCs, so-called. They are working as CCTV surveillance in Walmart, and they changed the software for that system. So we need to enable vendor account for each of these PCs. There are 2 PCs in every store, 8,000 stores across USA. And you need to enable that vendor account so technician can come and install new version of software. And to do that, you need to log in to remote machine using a software called NetOp. It's similar to TeamViewer, what is people know about. It's called NetOp. And you log in there, then you need to log out because you need to log in as administrator. So you log out and it kicks you out. So you need to log back in again. And then to log in as administrator, if technician didn't see that you are logged out and he logged you back in, then you need to log in and log out again. It kicks you out again and you log back in. When you're there, you need to start command prompt, CMD, and type 5 lines of some not huge, like, I don't know, a big code to enable that vendor account for 1 day.
Yeah.
So that technician can enable that. And you needed from 15 to 25, 30 minutes a day to do that with one account, with one PC, and you had 2 in each store, 8,000 stores. So we had a huge queue, people waiting online, half an hour, 1 hour to enable these accounts. We had like 60 people in the help desk working on it, and it was very frustrating and a long time. And the problem was that you could not copy and paste that code because it's on a remote machine. So you can't copy paste. You need to type it in, and you have like 5 sentences to type, big sentences, and if you mistake by 1 letter, it won't work. And then I realized that we can use PCX. That's a small Windows software that you can connect your CMD from your local machine to remote CMD and perform an action. So then you can copy paste things inside, and it will work on remote site. And then I create small bash script that will type all of these 5 sentences in a row and send the request. And I was able to unlock that vendor account for 1 day within 15 to 30 seconds instead of 15 to 30 minutes. And when I built that small automation, then I spread it around the team and everybody used it. And we had a queue from 1 hour to 0. We had free help desk agents. And that was heard in the company. So I was called from one manager and he told me like, we are building RPA team in the company. Are you interested? And I, of course, said yes. And here we are.
What year it was?
It was, I think, 2016, mid of 2016.
2016. Got it. And so did this company start with UiPath directly or what was the tool back then?
So they did the research and then they decided to go with UiPath.
Got it. And from 2016 till today, I mean, from developer or from beginning with scripting, etc., you work out till UiPath Most Valuable Professional. And question is, what was the journey or how did you get here? You know, like what was, I believe that everyone between MVPs did something on top, you know, like, or first of all, they're doing their job great, but secondly, also probably you did something on top or you know, like it can be community engagement, it can be, you know, some innovative things, etc. What brought you to MVP role?
So in that time, when I just started with UiPath was the only RPA tool that had Academy online for free. And it was only level 1 and level 2, level 3 didn't exist. Also, there were only 3 tools. You had only Blue Prism, that was completely closed. You were not able to look how it looks like online. It was completely closed. It was Automation Anywhere, that was also closed, and WorkFusion was just released at that time. And UiPath was only tool that you can actually download on your machine and install Community Edition and try something. And there was a forum. And then I saw, okay, people actually are answering on this forum. They're sharing knowledge. And I said, okay, I want to share these tools. I want to share the knowledge. So I got more interested in it. And I also visited Bucharest with UiPath headquarters. And I always make jokes about it because I was in the old UiPath headquarters. I don't know, have you been there?
I'm not sure. I think that I was in UiPath office in Bucharest maybe 2 years ago, 1.5, and I'm not sure if it is old or new, but it feels like it was already a new one.
No, that was a new one. In the old one, that was like only they on the ground floor they had a restaurant, some restaurant, and they were on the top 2 floors or 3 floors, I forgot. So it was the old headquarters. I was there, and then they show us how it works, why it works, and I got very into it. And I'm tracking always what they're doing new, and I'm trying to do new things. What brought me here to this MVP role is that I'm working on several new things with the new iPad that includes chatbot and AI fabric, and we're trying to create good use cases and to make it work.
That's great. That's amazing. One clarification here just for our listeners. When you mean closed, I would also specify that it means that it is not accessible to community. So I remember that at that times, what you are mentioning, like 2016, 17, whenever you talk to Blue Prism, for example, there was no yet community. And I'm not sure if even now they have a community edition, but back then it was B2B thing. So meaning that you can get an access to the software only if you are a company. And I'm not sure I believe that there were some free trials still, but as an individual, you could not access it. And I always compare UiPath with Visual Studio in standard development like C# or Java, etc. for the reason that 80 or 90% of the videos, if you go to YouTube and tap some C# tutorial or something like that, you would see that this is recorded in Visual Studio. And the reason for that is that they give a tool for free for the community, what immediately grow the audience, what immediately grow the expertise in this area, etc. And it was super new and highly appreciated what UiPath was doing the same thing with RPA, when you could use 100% functionality for free if you are using it for your like home purposes, for fun, automating maybe some Facebook, etc. So I think that this is the game changer. This was back then the game changer in this industry, where as of now I see that many companies are following more or less the same sample and the same approach. And before, we are getting closer to the development standards itself. One last question in this chapter would be, what would you recommend other guys who are listening to us? Because in this podcast is quite development related. So I believe that many developers are listening as of now. What would you recommend to those guys to do to become a next MVPs?
Yeah, well, just before we jump to that question, I want to go back to this, what you just mentioned, Edward. I completely agree with you. It was closed in the meaning that it was sold only business to business, as you mentioned. And this is why UiPath progressed that well. UiPath opened it to community, so anyone can install it, and then people across the world install it and run into problems, and they reported those problems back. So UiPath had, 100 problems, 200 problems per day, while Blue Prism, as business to business, you need to pay, you need to work on it to encounter the problem. So they had one problem in a month, and they couldn't fix them that fast as UiPath did. And then UiPath offered a prize, if you remember those days, who fixed these issues, who creates the best custom activity, etc. One of them is G Suite activities. And that's why UiPath grew so big.
Yeah, fully agree. And yeah, please.
And to go on this question, how did I get into MVPs? Because of that growth and how it's growing, and how you can actually do whatever you want with it, and you can build your own custom activity, and you can do whatever you want. I was very interested in what else would happen. And since I used to work in NCR first as an RPA developer, then I moved to Berlin, to BASF. And creating any process in BASF was pretty easy because it's 250 years old German company. They have every procedure written. They have documentation for everything they do there. That's why it's very difficult to change anything in procedure because everything is documented already. But that's a dream job for developer because you have everything ready. Just create a robot and you're done. Now in OLX, I have more freedom. So I tried a lot of things. First that I tried is to move from config file that's in Excel right now. I put it to G Sheet and see will it work. And it works fine. It's great because now you can change everything live.
Yeah, and I think that we would have a more extended discussion around the G Suite because it's one of the topics I'm also curious myself.
Yeah. And then, also, I was introduced to chatbot from UiPath. So with Dialogflow connected, you can trigger some processes inside of your orchestrator. And we have also a lot of invoices that we are doing OCR and ICR. I don't know, for listeners, do they know what's different between OCR and ICR? OCR is optical character recognition. ICR is intelligent character recognition. I always give example with Poly. Poly is the name, but OCR can recognize it as P0L1, while ICR will compare this word to other words in dictionary and says that this word has no meaning and will find the most suitable one, which will be Poly. And we are doing that. Also, we have, you wouldn't believe, but in Dubai, people are still paying internet with checks. And we have a lot of checks daily processed. So we need to recognize handwritten checks. And that's something that also we do with AI Fabric. And all this new thing that we are doing, we are connected to Immersion Lab from Boris. And these things brought me to MVP.
All right, cool. So to summarize, probably, that I captured two main factors which we can share with the audience. So the first one is forum engagement, so engagement with the community. And the second one is exploring, so hunger to these new things and try what you said, what if. So try to broke the system, try to broke the tool, try to go and try different ways of doing the same thing, etc. to bring innovation into this business and to bring something to community what everyone can benefit from.
Exactly. And everything is open. You can create your own custom activity. You can connect it with whatever you want. So explore. Think out of the box. Good,
sir. So it was extended introduction, and we are slowly getting into the development standards as a topic. On the very beginning, I wanted to introduce this topic as something for developers only and for technical guys who must listen to our podcast, etc. But I think that there is a certain level of importance for project management, RPA project management, and even RPA champions to be involved and to hear some things, where the main reason for that is that quite often you don't do it only yourself, but you also involve some external providers, or even your internal guys can be quite creative in the quotation marks. And I would say it with the excuse upfront, I would say that sometimes you can be sold bullshit if you have no clue what the standards are about. Yeah, you can say that if your robot is failing every second day and you have a high maintenance, you can just say, yeah, but this is how the RPA is, this is normal, or that is normal, or missing some standards is normal, etc. So I want to hear also from you, who do you think this podcast is for, this discussion is for, and why actually non-developers should listen to it?
So this podcast would be for everyone, and non-developers should listen to it because, as you said, you need to clarify what would be the good RPA use case. In most of cases, people are presenting something that they don't like to work on, something that bothers them, and they're just not a fan of doing it. But that's not actually RPA use case. So the biggest problem that I encountered is that when company wants to do RPA, they first hire developer. And they should not do that. They should first hire business analyst, or even better, they should take somebody from the company who knows processes and make him business analyst, and then document all your processes, create process maps, and when you have a backlog, then to hire developer. So this podcast will be for everybody. If they listen closely, they might have some answers on their questions that they didn't know they have questions.
Great. Good. So let's dive in. And I would start with actually your experience in building the development standards. So I'm curious about what was your first experience, how it developed along with, while you were getting more and more professional in RPA. And also, I would be curious hearing not just this perfect story of how bright and shiny everything was, but also if there were any downsides and learnings of this journey.
Oh, it was complete disaster. So, when we just started, now you have recommendations from UiPath, but when we started, you didn't have those recommendations. So everybody of us, it was 7 of us, were building bot how we think it should be built. Reframework did not exist at that moment. It was somewhere somebody built it, and you can download something, but that was nothing close to what it is now. So, and after a while, you had a bunch of processes that anybody built how they think. It was complete disaster. We ended up also having one process because we didn't have good BA. So then manager thought that it would be good to automate some process in one bank in UK, and that if you want to do that, you need to connect to remote machine. But on that remote machine, you're not able to install UiPath robot. So we need to do everything through OCR. And when you do everything through OCR, it needs to fail. So the process was designed that it will fail twice and go good once. That was complete disaster. So also common mistakes, PDDs were not created properly. I don't know. If you go somewhere to automate some process, that team will give you the process what bothers them the most. It's not something that will save the money the most. It's something that they hate to do the most. And that's sometimes not a good RPA opportunity. Yeah. So when I saw that, I said, okay, no, this needs to be changed. Let's make it good. Common mistake when you have new developer, and also when we start developing, who came from the C# background, you can use if else and else if. So you can put like if this and a few else's below, but in UiPath you don't have that opportunity. You have only if, this, else. And people were using like 5 or 6 ifs in another if, and that can break a robot. So that was something to say, okay, we're not going to use like that. You need to determine it. We need to know what you're doing. If you want to have multiple ifs, you use switch, etc., etc., etc. So because I was included in building COEs in NCR, in BSF, and now in OLX, I'm now making sure that everything's up to standard, that you need to have scaling standards.
And mentioning your journey, mentioning NCR and BSF, and as of now OLX, I'm curious, what were the interesting captures or the learnings you had along this journey? So what was something surprised you or something you didn't expect to be, but on the end it was? What were your learnings?
I don't know. A lot of things happened. That's something that you can never expect what can be there. Sometimes people will hate you, and after several months they see it pays off. If you try to tell them, okay, you need to use these scripting standards, you need to do this way, this way, this way, they will put a lot of questions there. Why should we do it like this? Why this? It's easier this way. It might be easier, but it's not the best way, because somebody can take over that process from you and you need to finish it later. And yeah, after 5 months or so, they come back to me and say, okay, this was worthy. We did need this documentation. We did need to name everything. Because when you're drag and dropping these activities in UiPath, they have their own names.
Yeah.
And now I am pushing to name every activity. Okay, click on this one. Because you will have like a click div or something. And I said, no, it needs to be, you click here, click there. And that's like boring job that you need to do. Like I need to rename all activities in my bot, so why it's not important. But actually when it comes to problem, when you need to debug it, then okay, now I know where this is and I can find it.
Yeah, got it. And what were so you mentioned that people may hate you. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on this? What does it mean?
So what does it mean? So when you start developing, I said first rule is that you need to use reframework every time.
Yeah.
But why? I have only one process, and I don't need to use reframework. And then there's an argue. Okay, you need to use reframework if you have one process that's one transaction. You make it like that and use reframework, and then people can start. Okay, this is not important. Why are we doing like that? But reframework has error handling, has everything what needs to be there, has complete state machine, has everything what one good process needs. Why would you build it from scratch if you have it done? You just put everything in process and you're good. You create your own error handling, but this is like one stable thing. And again, if somebody takes it over from you, then that person can continue. Because if you go on vacation, I don't want to call you on your vacation and tell you, okay, this bot failed, we need to fix it, because nobody else knows how. And later on, and also documentation. Developers hate documentation. So when you tell developer that he needs to document something, it's like, wow, why? But when you document it properly, then whoever takes over from you, or you will forget. We built a lot of bots. I built like around 70 bots. I don't remember what I did with every of them. So, and then when something breaks, you can go back and you can read documentation. Oh, I remember I did this. And you can fix it way, way, way more faster than if you don't have documentation or didn't name everything properly. So then people will start to hate me because I'm pushing them to name all conventions, to put all strings in naming convention, to create good documentation. But later, when we encounter some problem, then they say, okay, you were right. This is how we should do it.
The interesting thing is you describe all this thing about the naming, about the documentation, etc. I remember one kind of joke on the internet about the levels of the code or levels of the code quality. And when you start, I would describe it from the very beginning till the advanced level. So the first level is my code works somehow. Yeah, so this is the first level. The second level then is my code works, period. That's it. The third level was something like my code works also the next day, yeah? Then the level after was like my code works in 1 month, etc. And then the higher level started with I understand what I have written a month ago, and then other people understand what I have written a month ago. So actually my code works, and this is important to understand for developers as well as for managers, that code working is a very, very basic level, because there is a lot of hidden things behind which actually you don't see, but they are really critical to kill the process in continuous maintenance. If you mentioned 70 robots, yeah, and I assume that you were not the only one in the company. So if we take that in average in a company there are over 50 processes built, or over 100 processes built, if you don't take the right setup on the very beginning, I think that later you are focusing more and more resources on maintenance instead of developing of the new processes, because you need to fix, you need to repair, etc. And here I was, these kind of levels which I described, whether it works tomorrow or you can understand it 3 days afterwards, it's kind of a joke. But I want to understand and I want to discuss with you, what would you qualify as a minimal level you need to have for the standards? What is like minimal must have in a company as a one part? What are the good golden middle, I would say? What are the good standards like already good to have, and what is I would say, nice to have, like more advanced levels or advanced things. So how would you describe this from basic to advanced?
There is a joke on internet when they asked the developer what broke the code, and the developer answered, "No comment."
No comment. Yeah.
So first of all, you must have standards. That's a must. So those standards can be wrong. Per my perspective or your perspective, they can be wrong, but there needs to be some standards that you can follow. That whoever comes and reads them, says, okay, this is the way how we're going to do it. You need to have 3 environments. That's also a must. So you need to have UAT, you need to have development, and you need to have production environment. Some of my friends who are in the other companies, they don't agree with me. They said, okay, we have only dev and prod, we don't need UAT. I don't agree with that, but that's their standard. That's how they are doing it, and that's okay. So they have standard. Also, all robots should have the same level of access. And now this is again for managers. It's important to have all robots have the same level of access, but that then costs in terms of licensing. So if you have like 5 robots in production, and for us, it's very important to build orchestrators so you can orchestrate your robots to work the most efficient way. You want to have your all bots all the time busy so you can have your return of investment. Then all bots needs to have the same access, so all of them can work on the old processes. But then you need to pay 5 licenses for SAP, 5 licenses for Salesforce, for NetSuite, and that costs money. And then that's challenging. Then managers will ask you, okay, can you do it with 1 access? We will give only 1 bot. Yes, but that then limits us on starting the bot in orchestrator. Then I have limit. And then my robots are not most efficient as they should be. And of course, never work in production. Never do anything in production, any posting like we're going to do up until here, but we ain't going to click submit. Somebody will click submit at one moment. It will make a mistake. It will click submit, and it can pay some money or do something that's very wrong. And of course, one of the biggest roles, and this is now for business analysts, who will be working with SMEs, optimize and then automate. First, look at the process, look what are the holes in the process, how you can make the best of the process, and then we will automate it.
And here, if we spend some time with this point, optimize and then automate, for me, it is. I had both experience. We were automating the processes on go, meaning that we were applying really minimal optimization, and usually it is happening on the SDD level, that you kind of try to change the process how it would be the most suitable for a robot to execute it. As well as we had in the other company, we had an experience of having full CI, continuous improvement dedicated team for just focusing on improvements. An interesting thing about CI, it is called continuous improvement, where on the very beginning my main focus was on the word improvement, where now more and more I realize that it is continuous, meaning that I never saw, during my over 5 years of experience in RPA, I never saw the company with perfect processes. And big mistake of many companies and many managers is that they think that first we will have the perfect setup and everything, and then you go for robots, because you only automate the perfect processes, where I think is quite wrong, because when attempting and trying to make the process perfect, it would kill the business case, it can cost a lot of money, it can cost many iterations. So here we try to go for some kind of golden middle, where you have the process, you capture the 80-20, the things which you can actually optimize while automating. Maybe you would need 1 or 2 additional transactions, but you would not rework the process, because on the end, just if we take RPA out of this discussion, the poor improvement sequence can cost a lot of time and a lot of money, and very often projects die because of it, just because they are over-engineering the things, etc. So when you say optimize, on what level you are optimizing it? Is it business analysts who are suggesting some changes? Is it developer who do it? Is it both, where business analysts consider it from the process knowledge and developer from technical knowledge? How does it work for you?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, perfect process does not exist. That doesn't exist. So everybody needs to know that when you want to automate something, you need to have some handling in that process. I mentioned a million times, developing a robot is easy. Error handling and debugging, that's the difficult part. So to have a process properly optimized, we would ask SMEs. But usually for SMEs, you have manager of the team. So when you said, okay, we're going to automate something in some team, they dedicate a person to you who is actually manager of the team, who is managing that team, and okay, I'm going to be your SME. But that's completely wrong. And I said no. I always say no. I said, no, I respect you. You are manager. You are doing your management stuff. I need somebody who has hands on the problem, who is working with this every single day, who has this pain. And when you talk to that person who is actually dealing with this process daily, then that person itself will tell you, okay, I think this can be optimized, this, and this, because that person already had that hands-on experience. I had a problem when we automated something and manager was SME. And whenever we stuck with some problem, manager said, I need to come back to you. Yeah. And then he would ask somebody in the team and come back to us. And then we booked a meeting next day or next week. And we spent, instead of 1 day in catching the process, we spend like 2 or 3 weeks catching the process. And that's not the way how it should work. So you need to have somebody who has hands-on. When that person has hands-on, that person has ideas how to optimize it. Business analyst also has an idea, has a bit of technical experience, and can give some inputs. And on the end, when this process is introduced to developer, there are everybody. So SME is there, BA is there, developer is there, and we can talk together and we can see, okay, can we use API here? Can we do this here? Can we do this here? And then when you have everything in place, then BA will create PD document and give you for development.
Got it. Good. And switching from these basic standards, when you said, like, just to summarize, first of all, you must have those standards, yeah? And then how right or wrong are those the best practices, etc. This is discussable, but you must have standards. What do you consider then as a good standard, this golden middle?
So good standard, like a golden standard, is like you need to advise your admins in the system that you're working to keep their UAT environment, sandbox environments up to date. That's very important because we are building bots there. And that environment can be different from actually a live environment. And you build a bot and it starts failing because fields are not the same, names of the fields are not the same. And I had an experience where in sandbox environment, we had a table, and that table has 7 rows. In production, it had 11 rows. And the bot didn't pick up the good value. Again, this was the old thingy. It was like 3-4 years ago. That developer who built it used the row numbers, row index, not the name of the header. And that's why bot failed. We learned through our mistakes. Of course, you should use dispatcher performer whenever you can, because that's how you have your workload on your machines. You can dispatch all processes and then they can work one by one. And if you have access to all bots, as I recommended earlier, then any bot can pick up that queue and work on it.
Yeah, and maybe here for our listeners also, that's important to articulate, because I believe that we have different levels of them. So talking of dispatcher, why it is important? You don't really realize the work of dispatcher if you run your process on just one bot. Like, you can still see that, okay, you first populate the workload and then you kind of process it, but this is just okay. First of all, talking of dispatcher, we are speaking about the item which is loading items into a queue before the second robot is processing it. And then why it is important mainly is for scalability and for proper workload management also, where if you are to work with the 2 or more robots, this is important to manage properly those robots the way that they don't start working on the same item. Because if we take any system, like even Excel, if you start reading from Excel or writing into Excel by 2 users, it will fail. If you go to some transaction in SAP and you try to access it from 2 users, it will fail. So this is where I think that queue and dispatcher is critical for scalability as well as the framework itself. So this is quite good point you have mentioned here about this dispatcher. Thank you very much.
So, but there's also one thing that people don't think about. We had a process in India, and we need to process, I think, 50,000 of invoices daily, because we had customers, and if you do it with one robot, it won't make it do it in one day, and your invoice will expire. So you need to do it simultaneously. If you dispatch all your invoices to queue, and then 5 or 6 bots will pick it up from the queue, and you will do that process 5 or 6 times faster. So instead of doing that process for, 40 hours, it will be done in 10 hours. And in 40 hours, there are the 2 days. And actually, the invoices from the next day, they're staying for the day after it. And then you have load of invoices, and that completely breaks finance. So this is very important. So if you don't know, sometimes it can be like 7,000, 8,000 invoices. Sometimes it can be like 40, 50,000 invoices. I don't know, have you heard, but Amazon earned more than 99 billiards. Now they are like trilliardaire or something. I don't know, Joe Bezos. So that happened during this crisis that we have right now. While we are talking, it's currently Corona time, so we are all locked at home. And Amazon had, and not just Amazon, all online shops, eBay, OLX, we all had a lot of customers buying online, and you had a lot of invoices. So you never know when that number of invoices will increase.
Yeah.
So you need to make your bot scalable so it can handle 10 times more than it should.
And also in the same time, like one thing that workload grows, and this COVID is quite interesting sample. On the one hand, your workload grows, but on the other hand, this is also not the best time for hiring people and not the best time for upskilling people, because you can't just invite them to office and they, like someone of your employees will take care of them. But this is much harder to set it all up remotely. So this is quite important. Besides dispatcher, you have mentioned several points there. Is there anything else you would add to this middle level standards?
Yes, of course. I mentioned before, use a switch, for God's sake. Don't use if that will break code. And so people need to know, developers, please use switch. It's very, very powerful activity in UiPath. Yes, also there needs to be standard for BA. So there needs to be like a checklist what BA needs to have before he can give it to developer. So all the things that need to be prepared: process map, PD document, screenshots with clicks, when to do, etc. That's very important. And maybe one of the most important things is to educate the people who are you working with. If you're taking process for somebody, that can be a roadblock, because that person will think that robot will take away job from them. So you need to tell the people, okay, this bot will only help you, that it ain't gonna take away your job. And that's very important to have.
Yeah. All right. These were the gold standards, or so-called golden middle standards. It's good standards to have in a company. What is a little bit above it? Like, what would you consider as a truly advanced standards? What we say nice to have, yeah? So it is not necessarily must have for all the companies, but very, very nice to have. What would you add to this list?
So nice to have, I really like agile methodology of working. I really like it. Even a lot of developers hate it, I know, and managers love it. I really, really like it because you can actually see the progress. You can see if somebody is stuck with something, how to help him. You should determine sizes of project, and you should do stand-ups. So the same way how you slice your code inside of the tool, RPA tool that you're working with, the same way you can slice your developer processes, and you can say, okay, today I'm working on logging in. tomorrow I'm going to be working on navigating to some tool and taking data, etc. And then you can have progress. And that can be annoying for developer if he would go every day and say, okay, I'm still working on logging in. I'm still working on logging in. But manager can see that you are struggling with it and he can give you help. Okay, do you need any help with that? Somebody will be there to help you. Or you can just say, okay, I know what I need to do. I just need more time. Then you slice that login to more pieces, etc. So that's very nice to have. That's I think that an advanced standard should be. Also, you should have if you're having a team, you should have a project, not a deadline. So, okay, you need to build this bot. When you can do it, you can look at the process. Okay, I need 1 to 2 weeks, or I need 5 to 10 weeks. Okay, you have 10 weeks. Build it in 10 weeks. We'll see what did you do. Don't give developers working hours, because nobody needs seat warmers. So just somebody to sit 9 to 5, that makes no sense. So hire people and give them freedom to work when they want, how they want. If they want to work from home, leave them to work from home. That's totally fine. And everybody will give the best what they can, I assure you. And the last one, we talk about framework, but nice to have is advanced framework, to change your framework, to change the reframework to your needs. For example, we changed our framework to use Google Sheets, not Excel. And then we can live change some things inside, and it will reflect on a bot in production. So I'm not saying that anybody should have access to that sheet, no, but you can then change some things in your config file without republishing it. In BSF, we used a shared Windows drive, because we had Windows servers, and our config files in Excel were stored in that shared drive, so you can access to it and change something without reflecting it to production. But here in OLX, we don't use any Windows. We have everything on Amazon. So when I asked our bit team to provide me with some Windows shared drive, that was not possible. It was possible, but it was more job for them. It was way easier for them to give me S3 bucket, or to give me, I don't know, Google Sheet, and then I can do it. So we changed our framework to use config file from G Sheet. Second thing, what we did, there is something missing in reframework. For example, if your transaction fails, it will try it for 3 times. If it fails 3 times, it will go to next transaction. But there is no mechanism who will count failures. So if you have 100 transactions, each of them will be 3 times processed, and each of them can fail 3 times. And your bot, after 2 hours, will tell you, I failed everything. I successfully failed. And that's not good. So you need, we built another mechanism who will count the failures. If you have 3 failures in a row, so each of transactions 3 times tried, if you have 9 failures in a row that failed, it will stop the bot and notify you, okay, I had 3 transactions, I tried each of them 3 times, and each of them failed. Okay, then something is wrong. You need to take a look. That saves time and money, and bot is not going to wrong direction.
Got it. So if to summarize this nice to have level, so you mentioned there are mainly 3 things. So it was agile and this flexibility, which may be of course subjective as any other thing, like someone likes it, someone not, but be agile. Then the second one was have a deadline but not working hours, to don't have the seat warmers. And correlated with this was that you kind of expressed that it would be nice to have more freedom for people, like you focus on delivery, but you don't focus on how it is done, when it is done, etc. So if it is done from home, especially in this coronavirus times, we learned that we much more people could actually deliver from home than we thought initially. And the last one was framework, which you mentioned also in the previous point, but here the important is that you don't just use a framework, but you adjust it and you kind of tailor it for your organization. This is quite interesting thing. And if you are to describe development procedure from end to end, I am curious, where does it start and where it ends in your company? If we take for now OLX, how does the development procedure look like end to end? As you may understand, our episode is coming to the end. The second part, which is to be published soon, will start with answer to just mentioned question. For now, if you enjoyed this episode, I would kindly ask you to hit subscribe button. Also, don't forget to visit automationimpact.io. There you can find more podcast related materials. Cheers!